You're listening to Three's a Crowd, the North East Footy Podcast, with Rye for Borough, Steve for Newcastle United, and Ted for Sunderland.
He couldn't make it 4 out of 4, could he? He just couldn't do it.
Early start scuppered him today. Plus, I think he wanted to do the show tomorrow, didn't he? But Newcastle's game
He's
tomorrow.
working. Rye's working.
Right.
So, yeah, he's unfortunately... I'm saying unfortunately. It's still going to be a decent show. You've still got the best looking two out of the three of us. So, yes, hello, mate. You all right?
Hi. Yes, very good, mate. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Somebody's on a pub crawl today, aren't they?
Yes, me, mate. So, hence the early start.
Yes, yeah. Oh, God. Day drinking just doesn't do it for me anymore. I can't do it. By about 4 o'clock, I'm just ready for me bed. Honestly, I'm getting, I don't know, just getting too old for it now, I think.
I prefer the day drinking to the night drinking. So it is weird. It is weird, yeah, definitely. But maybe that's because I live in Britain and you live in Cyprus.
But there is a bit of that as well. I mean, I was out last night. We were just talking about it off air there. I went to see my pal Mike, who has the pool hall here. Got the taste for it last night, so I'm off to a pub just outside of Ironapa today to watch the Sunderland game. We'll be watching the Sunderland game and the Borough game. Few TVs around us, so it's take your pick. Have a couple of bottles of Leon with Charlie the Geordie, and yeah, we'll see where we get from there. But yeah, crashing on, I suppose. A little recap over what we talked about last time around. Newcastle, a very, very easy win. It was the only prediction I've got right probably in about a month. Yeah. I went for 3-0, comfortable, and it was, to be honest. I mean, yeah, all right, they're always going to be up against it when they went down to 10 men, but I don't think it was ever any sort of doubt. If anything, maybe just Newcastle didn't even get out of second gear, did they?
I guess, in the words of Jimmy Greaves, it was a fatty out game. At the start, yeah, it was definitely one of those games though where we started off quite well. First 10, 15 minutes, Newcastle were doing okay, but we just couldn't find a way past Ipswich. They were defending deep. They were up for the fight. And the guy who sits next to me, Dave, at the match, basically just said, "Look, Steve," he says, "I'd never understand this." He says, "With teams that get promoted from the Championship, they come up with this like cavalier attitude of, we're gonna take the Premiership big guns on at their own game. They get whopped every week. They get relegated in record time, and then when it comes to that stage where they're down or almost down, they suddenly discover how to defend, and that's basically what Ipswich did. They defended with their lives. They put their bodies on the line, and had they done a bit more of that through the season, home and away, that maybe would have stayed up by the skin of their teeth and then been able to build on that kind of like success. But it did take something to change it. Of course, the subsequent penalty which Alexander Isak tucked away changed the game. The sending off, of course, it was a sending off, and there is no doubt about it. And it did change the course of the game, and Newcastle were always going to be too good for Ipswich. Do I think we would have struggled if it hadn't been for the dismissal and the penalty? I still think we would have turned it around. I don't think Ipswich could have kept up that for 90 minutes. But then the second half was just it was a breeze really for Newcastle, and it got us back on track after the defeated Villa. It got us 3 points. It got us 3 goals, which meant it gave us a boost on the goal difference, and it put us back into third place in the Premier League up until last night, when of course Manchester City beat Wolves 1-0. But it put us in the driving seat. Another result this week, which was a benefit to us, of course, was Nottingham Forest getting beat off Brentford. It almost has that kind of feeling now that the stars are aligning. As long as Newcastle do what they've got to do, then I don't think it'll be us who misses out. It's going to be interesting. It's not a one-horse race. It's there's 5 teams potentially could still creep into the Champions League place. And as we'll look ahead to later on, Brighton is next on the horizon on Sunday. It's a tough game. Geordie Toomba mentioning Delap. It's weird because we're being linked with players by the media. That doesn't mean that Newcastle are even interested in Delap. He's got a release clause, which would appeal to most teams in the Premier League. I think he'll have a lot of suitors. But watching him and watching Brian Mbeumo or Mbeumo, however you want to pronounce it, and Delap against Ipswich, I know my money would be probably better spent on Mbeumo than it would be on Delap. There was this incident between Delap and Dan Burn at one point. It gave you a good idea. I know most people look small alongside Dan Burn, but it was almost that reminiscence of that Philip Albert Juninho moment back in the 90s, where Juninho's looking up at Albert like that, and that was the way it was. And I wasn't impressed with Delap. And I know it's only one game, and it wasn't even a full game. I know he was coming back from injury. But would he be better at Newcastle? Would he fit into our team? Potentially. But if it was a flip of the coin for me, if I was in Paul Mitchell's position and I'd watched Mbeumo and watched Delap in the last couple of weeks against Newcastle, my money would be on the Brentford winger because he's great. He's pace. He doesn't look like a footballer, but he is a good footballer. A really good footballer, and he scores goals and he provides. And there was a lot more to his game than there was to Delap's. I wasn't impressed with Delap and that pettiness and that stupidity that he had with Dan Burn on both sides, of course. But I wasn't impressed.
And he doesn't need to do it, Steve, as well. That's the thing. There's definitely a player there. He's still a young lad. He's still developing and learning his trade, but he didn't need to get involved with that side of it. Perfect the technique, perfect the on the pitch stuff before you start dabbling in the dark arts and all that kind of thing. And Johnny Toomba mentioned how many times did he go down with no contact? I thought exactly the same thing, to be honest. And again, he just doesn't need to do it. He's not the size of Dan Burn, but he's got a bit of heft about him. And if he stays on his feet a little bit more, there's a similar situation with the name's going to escape me now. The kid who's on loan, Josh Coburn, who's on loan from Middlesbrough at Millwall. I actually like Josh Coburn. There's a player there without a shadow of a doubt, but just stay on your feet. You're a big lad, you use that power, to power through people, just play through them the way that Haaland does, just absolutely batter and ram them. So he didn't need to get involved with that. And I don't know, maybe it's just a little bit of petulance, and obviously their heads are down because I think they knew they were going to be relegated anyway. It was a matter of when, not if. So maybe there was a little bit of that coming into play as well. But just overall, Steve, I thought it was very, very comfortable. And I think that's a sign that Newcastle are turning a corner, or certainly evolving into that kind of next level of team that they want to be. Where it's, on paper, it can be a bit of a banana skin for a team that's playing against a team that's fighting for their lives, but to actually get through those games with a 3-0 scoreline, entertaining game, another clean sheet at the back, and to get through that without getting out the second gear says something about the way that they're going.
Yeah, I would agree, mate, 100%. But listen, back on the winning track. Eddie Howe was back, of course, as well.
Yes.
He still wasn't his usual upbeat self at the press conference. Still having a few sniffles and coughs, and but it was good to see him back in the dugout. Of course, the other major talking point was Tyndall getting his third yellow card of the season, which means he's suspended for Sunday. He does like a little bit of to and froing on the sidelines. That's what makes Tyndall what he is. But it was a good game, comprehensive game. I do want to point out as well, though, there's a disease spreading amongst Newcastle United fans, and I don't like it. And I'm not sure why it is, but we are starting to see more people leave early, whether we're winning or losing. And I really, really do not understand why anybody would want to leave with 75 minutes on the clock, especially in this day and age when we're adding potentially 5 to 10 minutes because of substitutes alone, at the end of a game. when you support your team, you know, to the end of the game. We've all had to have moments where we've left the game at some point, 2 minutes early, 3 minutes early. You know, we might have to get back for a family appointment or whatever, you know, and we can't afford to miss that bus or train. It happens to everybody. But I'm now starting to see the same people leave week after week on 75 minutes. And I will never understand that. And the same person, and I've made this point on here on NUFC Matters before, the same people are coming in 5 minutes late to the game, and the same people are going down for a pint at half time. That's, of course, that's their prerogative. They might need to go to the toilet or whatever, but they're going for a drink or going to get something to eat. So they're going down 35 to 40 minutes on the clock. Again, there's injury time at the end of the first half. You're talking at least another, let's just say, for a conservative guess of 5 or 6 minutes they're missing at half time. So there's another 10 minutes. And then add to that 15 minutes at the end of the game that they're missing. So that's 25 minutes a game they're missing. Now, if you add that up, obviously Newcastle's season, there's 19 home games. So if we go and multiply 19 by 25, let's just say they're missing 6 games a season. So at the start of next season,
if you didn't have me to work on that, Steve.
Not at this time in the morning. If the club actually said to you next season, if you were that person and the club said to you next season, there's your season ticket. But we're going to take Newcastle. We're going to take the Manchester United.
Minutes.
We're going to take the Manchester United, the Manchester City, the Liverpool, the Arsenal, the Chelsea, and the Tottenham games off you next season. And we're going to give them. We're going to sell your seat to somebody else, and you'd be going, well, what for? Well, we're just that's how many games you'll have actually missed. You know, the time accumulated and the times you've actually not been there supporting the team. I tell you what, it would change people's minds. But I know I'm being pedantic and probably a bit stupid, but it's not one person now that I'm picking on here. There's lots of people doing it, and it's starting to become a major thing. And I guess I guess the prime example, and I did watch, the match at the weekend, and that was Wembley, the semi-final, Man City's semi-final. Now, to be fair to Man City, there is a reason for that. They've been to 29 times. They've been to Wembley since the takeover, but modern day football now, mate, it's not what it was. Things are changing. Newcastle's takeover is changing.
I had a row with a friend about this who's a Man City fan. And to be honest, I mean, Pep came out and said, it's these harsh economic times and all that sort of thing. Look, let's be honest. If Middlesbrough or Sunderland or Newcastle got to Wembley, whether it's a semi-final, whether it's our 29th semi-final, whether it's our 209th semi-final, we'd still sell out our allocation. I believe so anyway. And I agree. It's different levels, mate. And listen, Man City are basically. Can you remember that chap who won the national lottery a few years back?
Yeah.
He's the scumbag who's basically won a few quid. They're throwing the money around. Once that money goes, they'll just go back to being a scumbag club again with barely clocking 30,000 fans through the gate. I firmly believe that. And to use the economic times as an excuse, I just find really just crappy. Yeah, it's pathetic, mate, because is there a kind of a worse off area than the northeast of England where we are packing out our stadiums week in, week out? We're knocking out 40,000 fans every week in the Championship. Newcastle were getting that and more when they were in the Championship. We're getting 30,000 plus when we were in League One. To say that it's because of economic times, I just don't buy that. And it's coming from a club that can pretty much buy any other club underneath them. I just found it a little bit in bad taste. Let's put it that way. We had a question there, and it caught my eye because you know what I do. Normally, I'm not doing what the fact this week because we're on a bit of a shorter day. But where is it?
On the screen.
Jasmine. Thank you. Yes. Which Sunderland player won a European Cup Winners' Medal in 1980 with Forest as an unused sub and also won the FA Cup in 1973? I actually don't know the answer to this. I'm gonna Dave Watson.
Somebody's put in the chat. Jimmy Montgomery. But he played in the semis. So he won the cup in '73. But was he an unused sub?
No, because they only had one sub back in the days of 1980.
Jasmine says it was Jimmy Montgomery.
Was it really? Wow, I did not. Jasmine, that is absolute quality stuff. That I never knew that.
Yeah. I didn't either.
As big a Sunderland fan as I am, I absolutely did not know that. That's absolutely cracking, that, Jasmine. Do you want to do a quiz next time?
Yeah, send them direct to Ted in the future.
Absolutely, that's a worldy bit of trivia. That, like, I might use that off air as well. So moving on. Obviously, we'll come to your game tomorrow a little bit later on, Steve. But Middlesbrough didn't fare too well against Norwich City. We thought that there would have been a bit of fire in their belly because obviously they knew the result from the Luton Coventry game. Prior to that, the Luton Coventry game obviously was the early kickoff. Luton winning that with a last-minute goal, 1-0. Both teams haven't had players sent off as well. It was kind of a bit of a damp squib, I guess, in the end. It was a lot of Middlesbrough fans saying that there was just no energy, there was no kind of killer instinct, and obviously we haven't got Rye on with us this week, but I think that it was pretty much, disappointing, a little bit of despair, but they've got a chance to put it right today. But did you see any of the highlights of it today? Because for me, like, when you're on the precipice of getting into the playoffs and you turn in like a bit of a lackluster performance like that, we've got an excuse. We've been there a couple of weeks now. But for Middlesbrough, I just think it was a bit disappointing. Were you surprised when you saw the result?
I mean, I was keeping an eye on it because obviously, for me, I was just obviously doing the show. I like to keep ahead of what's going on, but it wasn't great. I guess maybe Jack Wilshere played his part. It was his first game in interim charge in Norwich. That new manager kind of bounced. I know at the end of the season, it sounds a bit weird having a new manager bounce, but people are playing. I guess some of those people are playing for a contract potentially over there. He'd only been there a week after the previous manager Hoff Thorup was sacked. I think that's what it was. It was just like it was a bounce. Maybe Wilshere's the man for the job. Who knows? But Borough just went into this in poor form, and they've now just won one of the last 5. And I mean, the playoff hopes, like we discussed last week, are literally now hanging by a thread. Down to 9th after that result. And they've got to beat Coventry on the final day today and hope that Millwall and Blackburn fail to win. I mean, Coventry losing at Luton in the early kickoff, like you said, was a big. That should have been the biggest incentive. That should have been the biggest. It should have been the biggest incentive. But they went into the game. They had a good start. Hackney, had an early chance, and then after that, they lacked the motivation, but they seemed to lack the whole, they didn't seem to realise the seriousness of the position they were in. It was almost as if they'd given up the ghost, and one of my mates who's watched Borough quite a bit this season said it's almost as if we don't want to go up. Is that the players? You would imagine not. You would imagine the players would want to play in the Premiership. Maybe it's just something that kind of mental block. I just don't know. It's such a strange thing. I mean, Carrick did all he could, on the sidelines. He was out of the dugout. He was urging the players on. Ultimately, as well, though, their goalkeeper did, Norwich's goalkeeper had a fairly decent game. I mean, in the game itself, Borough did have 16 shots on target. 5 shots on target, 16 shots at goal. And the possession was fairly equal. But it was, it wasn't good enough. It's as simple as that. And I think if Middlesbrough don't make the playoffs, they're going to be very, very disappointed. They just had no spark. I don't think you could fault Middlesbrough for effort, as in, putting themselves about and trying to create chances. Sometimes it just doesn't go for you, And I think a lot of it was down to the fact that Norwich came with a new manager. Had it been the previous manager, maybe they would have had a chance. But disappointing result that for Middlesbrough.
Yeah, absolutely. Mind you, talking to the managers, it's like a bit of a Premier League alternate reality in terms of the managers that's kicking about. So we had, obviously, Jack Wilshere was managing Norwich City. You've got, obviously, Michael Carrick, ex-Premier League legend or recent Premier League legend, managing the Borough. You've got Tom Cleverley managing Watford now. James Morrison took temporary charge of West Brom. It's kind of that kind of little golden generation of English produced players making a name for themselves in coaching, which I think is badly needed as well. I don't think we've seen them represented anywhere near as much. There's been a tendency to go foreign, so it's nice to see actually some of these young managers, young coaches being given the opportunity. It just caught my eye that quite a few of those names were. Just feels like they were playing just last weekend, to be honest. But that's a sign that we're all definitely getting old. Tom's made a great point here. Borough are missing a striker. For me, I think it's proven more and more the case, Steve, that the decision to sell Latte Lath was just an absolutely horrendous decision. Fair enough, if he wanted to leave, that's his prerogative, his agent's prerogative to try and get him the best deal. But Middlesbrough didn't have to let him go halfway through the season. For me, the carrot was there, the incentive was there to hold on to him in that good position they were in, because in January, in fact, it was after the window closed as well. There's not the opportunity to spend the money to bring somebody in who's going to be of equal, if not better, standing than Latte Lath. He was one of the best strikers in the division, if not the best. So for me, that decision has been vindicated to be very, very just poor, really. And I know Rye's gone on about the recruitment process not being fantastic either. Some of the decisions, they just haven't backfilled some of the key positions that they needed to. The defence has been very, very weak. So regardless of what happens, I mean, even if they were to manage to fluke their way into the Premier League this season, I know it's a bit of a long shot, but even if they did, or if they didn't, it's major surgery required, I think, on Middlesbrough squad for next season. I think Ryan would agree with that as well. It's, do you see Carrick being there for that rebuilding process, Steve, or do you think it'll be a fresh clear out altogether?
Yeah, we discussed this last week a little bit, didn't we? And I think we feel that if they get knocked, they end up in the playoffs, then they've got a chance of staying together. But I think that Carrick will leave the building. I don't think he'll fall on his sword. I think there'll be a what do they call it? Mutual consent.
Mutual.
Yeah, I think it'll be a mutual consent departure. I can't see Gibson and Carrick falling out. I think it'll just be a parting of the waves and an acceptance that this wasn't good enough, And I think Carrick will go away, do what Eddie Howe did, have a period of time out of reflection, see where he went wrong, and come back better for it. Because I still think that Carrick potentially is one of those managers who will do well. He's got something about him. He's a lot more professional. He's a lot more professional, and maybe professional is not the right word, but he just seems to have the capabilities of being a manager more so than, say, somebody like Steven Gerrard, who was in the same kind of playing era as him. Yeah. I think that Frank Lampard as well, another person who I think can manage at a certain level. I still think, unfortunately for Carrick, that it's been a little bit like the managers at Sunderland over the last 10 years. It's that kind of restriction on being able to buy players. And when a player comes through the ranks who is good, who, if you could keep a hold of them and build your team around them, they just sell them because they've got to. And I think that's where Middlesbrough are at, and it's sad because, Newcastle were in that position, after the Bobby Robson days, the change from Dougie, Freddie Shepherd and John Hall and Douglas Hall to Mike Ashley. We were in exactly the same position, and it's awful when you're in that position, but I think that's where Middlesbrough are. So I think Carrick's CV will stand up, and I think there'll be plenty of people would like to see Michael Carrick as their manager. And I don't see him ever being a number two or going and taking a job at an academy now. I think he's established himself as a manager, and who's to say that in the future he doesn't get another job, in the Championship, very soon. Premiership, I don't know. He's untested in that, but it'd be interesting to see Michael Carrick with some money, certainly.
It would, and Gary's nailed it there. He's got an air about him. I think he has as well, to be honest. He carries himself so well, speaks well about the game. He's not silly. He's not reactive in any way. You know, you see a lot of managers, certainly modern day managers, who will react to certain questions, react to the media. Carrick seems to just be very, very calm and collected and thoughtful, and I think that's that tells something about the pedigree of him. I think while he might not be a Borough next season, I think he'll do all right wherever he ends up going. That's for sure. A quick word on Borough's opponents today, Coventry City. Well, a couple of things actually. An ex-Coventry player sort of caught my attention during the week. A potential target for Newcastle as well, I believe. It's the Sporting Lisbon striker, Gyökeres. I might be absolutely murdering the pronunciation of that. But Steve, you'll have probably seen plenty of him because he's been banging them in for fun for Sporting Lisbon. Any sort of, are you hearing any rumours at your end that he could be interested in Newcastle?
There seems to be more rumours about players in the Premier League, you know. I mean, the rumours that are circulating about our club tend to be players going out. You know, we've had the Alexander Isak to Arsenal campaign. Now it's Alexander Isak to Liverpool. You know, Anthony Gordon to Liverpool is another one. But, you know, the players that have been heavily linked with Newcastle are still the same faces. Brian Mbeumo, Liam Delap from Ipswich, and potentially, you know, being linked with the centre-half, Huijsen at Bournemouth as well. So Trafford, of course, everyone seems to think that Trafford is a done deal almost. So those are the players that you hear and linked with. Not so much Gyökeres. You know, I've not heard about him. Jonathan David was another one who I'd love Newcastle to sign. I think Jonathan David would be a perfect fit for Eddie Howe's team. Mark Gay, he's resurfaced this week as well as a potential signing. You know, obviously he's at the end of his contract this summer, and Newcastle were heavily linked with him and trying to sign him last season. So lots of players already been linked, but it's silly season already. You know that, and the Premier League season isn't even over yet.
No, I think the way he won, do you think that'll hinge a little bit on whether Palace actually win the FA Cup? Because win that, they've got European football. He's still going to be based in London. Do you think that could turn his head, or do you think like the lure of a big club like Newcastle might be a bit much for him, and he'll end up going for that?
I mean, again, he's another player that I've watched. I mean, unfortunately for him, I think he's like fourth top goal scorer for Newcastle this season with the amount of own goals he scored. But he's not the best. He's not been the best centre half. I haven't been overly impressed with him. But do I think he would come to Newcastle still? Yeah, I do think there's a potential signing, transfer deal to be done there. I think the player would be keen. I'm not so sure whether Crystal Palace are keen on working with Newcastle. That's the problem, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Coventry City obviously visiting the Borough today. Lampard's done an absolutely cracking job. Everybody knows I don't like Coventry City. I absolutely can't stand them. I really don't want to see them in the playoffs. I'm hoping for a Borough win today, if anything. Don't tell Rye that, because it'll go to his head. But yeah, listen, Lampard, like I said, maybe it's to do with the level that he can manage at. He's done a cracking job with turning them around. I mean, they were floating away down the bottom. Looked like potential relegation contenders when Lampard came in, but he seems to have galvanised them. It's not pretty what they do, Steve, but they've been very, very effective. I mean, they mullered us 3-0 earlier on in the season. Again, another game that we've lost away at Coventry City, but that's another thing altogether. He's got them motivated. He's got them on the front foot, made them quite physical. Can you see any way for Borough to get past them today? Is there any hope for them?
It's got a feeling of a proverbial cup final. It is winner takes all, but the bottom line is Borough win. They're still relying on other results. Frank Lampard's done a really good job. Let's face it. He come in. He did a great job at Derby. The one thing I do like about him is he gives youth a chance, and I think that's a positive thing, for Coventry moving forward. But yeah, look, I think Borough will beat Coventry today. 100%. I think they'll beat Coventry today, but I think they'll end up staying down because the other results go against them.
I love that comment. What in the northeast is going on here? I take it you must be new, Colton. Welcome along, mate. Yeah, it's a Northeast Footy podcast where we don't hate each other. It seems to work for some reason.
That's it. We've done it for a full season on YouTube almost now, and it has gone well.
Yeah.
We're transferred from a radio station. We did it for a full year on a radio station called. We usually have a Borough fan on as well, which is always good viewing on a Saturday morning.
Yes, it is. It is indeed. So welcome along. Last one of the regular season for the championship, Steve. But obviously, we'll think we're going to be back next season, and maybe work on the show a little bit. Maybe have the occasional guest on as well. And
we need to work on the fly. We need to work on the flyers. Like there's been a dodgy flyer doing the rounds, made by Track DPT, which unfortunately has two Teds on it. One in a red and white top, one in a black and white top, and Rye on it as well. Rye always seems to look great on these flyers. He always seems to get me incredibly wrong.
Well, about that, I know we're going off subject here, but so I turned that flyer into a beach towel. So I've ordered it. I've ordered it from a very cheap website that you get stuff sent from China. Basically you can design your own beach towel. So I've uploaded that picture of the three of us onto a beach towel.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion? Maybe
Might
not a
be
beach
awesome.
towel. Yeah, I was going to say make it a bum towel and just stick it in the bathroom.
Yes.
For when you need to do your ablutions.
That's it. I'll make sure Rye gets a good face full of gooch when I get out the
Very
bath.
good.
And I don't mean the former Sunderland player. The one thing I did, so obviously I showed the missus, I've done a bit of our first merch. So I showed her that and she went, "Oh, Steve's not going to like that." She just went, it's made him look massive on there. It has. He's maybe just made you a little bit too portly. He's given you my body, but your head.
Typical of the Aussie.
So
Send him the Botany Bay.
Again, yeah. Where are we? I saw a couple of questions out. It was 300 players. Yeah, Gary, you're absolutely right on there. Has the club started using the media for its own ends and way more too expensive? How implying we'll be doing plenty of business? Usually we're quiet. It's a good point.
It is, Craig. Yeah, I mean, look, Newcastle have got to use the media because everybody else does, but it's not the media who. It's the agent who feed the media. The club give you their views and speak to the media at the press conferences. We hear from Eddie Howe then, so that's where they pick up the sound bites about that. But I genuinely think it's the agents who push the narrative, and that's because they benefit 10%, 10%, 10%, 20%, whatever they get. It's crazy, really. That's where we're going to be,
Just tell her no milk and some sugar in mine. Please.
Yes, I know. I knew you were going to say that. That's why I muted the mic. He says 2 sugars, no milk in his, please.
I even heard the gas cooker going on. Oh, lovely. I hope that's a bacon sandwich. How's the bacon, Steve?
How's the bacon?
So listen. We may as well get down to a prediction. Then we can put Middlesbrough to bed for the day. I'm more out of hope than expectation. I'm going to go for a Middlesbrough win. It's going to be a tight one though, so let's go for a 2-1. A 2-1 for Middlesbrough today. I'm sure Ryan will be very happy with that one.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-0 win for them. They don't score many goals, but I'm going to go for a 1-0 win.
Fantastic. And on to the love of my life. Well, the other one. I'm just going to thank you. She's asleep. She'll never have heard that. Oh, that love of my life. That one there.
She'll probably smell the bacon this end.
Yeah, do you know what? It's making me a bit hungry, that, and I can't even smell it. So, yes, Sunderland, very, very disappointing performance. I thought that was going to be the game to turn it round last weekend. I was very, very hopeful for a big win. I think I even went for a daft 4-0 win for Sunderland. But, yeah, the game against Oxford was very disappointing again. Oxford obviously were fighting for their lives. That result was good enough for them to be assured of Championship football next season as well. Thoroughly deserving of it. They bossed the game, the majority of the game for me. We never looked quite at it. Really sorely missed Mayenda, who probably could have played, but because of the concussion protocols, he wasn't allowed to play in the game. there's a few players coming back this week, Steve, which is going to hold us in a lot better stead. The likes of Dan Ballard is now available for this weekend. Romain Mundle is not available, but will be for the first playoff game. He's in full training. They had a warm weather training camp over in Portugal during the week, so it seems to be that we're getting players back. Young Niall Huggins is back in training, and honestly, if ever there was a player that just deserved a bit of good luck and a bit of a run in the team, it's that lad, because he's been out another year with this injury that he picked up last season. A good prospect as well. You know, the Leeds fans were disappointed when they let him go. He's got something about him, and I really, really hope we do see him appear in a Sunderland shirt sooner rather than later. Unless he's back, it just seems that we're getting defensive reinforcements at the right time. Mundle back as well, obviously, for the playoffs. Today's a bit of a free hit, Steve, to be honest. I know, obviously, it would have been nice to play ourselves into a bit of form. We'll talk about this, about the importance of going into the playoffs on the back of some decent results and some decent performances, and it just isn't happening. Blue Rhythm Boy, I've got to be honest with you. Yeah, we have lost momentum with it. It's partly down to injuries. It's partly down to being assured of the playoffs for his 10 minutes left. Ted messaged you. What was that?
Completely ignoring me messages. I've sent you messages on here. I've messaged you on WhatsApp. I'm trying to keep you on track for the cat.
Oh God, yes, absolutely. Right, very quickly then. I'll cut to the point on it. Sunderland for me, it's a must-win game, Steve. It has to be a winning game today. If there's no performance today, you end up with a very, very edgy set of playoff games against, more than likely, it's going to be Bristol City, but we just can't afford to go into that. We'll talk about that a little bit more depth, but I do believe we have a guest in for something black and white and furry.
Yes, we do have plenty of tweets for Troll of the Week section. Here it is. Some great ones this week. Thank you to everybody who sent us them. The Liverpool League celebration kit is now out. There we go. Looks wonderful, that. Congratulations to Liverpool for winning the Premier League, of course. Predictions at the start of the season, they're great. I will be revealing mine towards the end of the season, of course. Most of you know what I predicted, but this was how Gary Neville saw things. Man United to finish third and Liverpool to finish fifth. And Jamie Carragher had Nottingham Forest to be relegated.
Experts.
Exactly. You might remember last week we featured the wonderful shithousery at Liverpool, where Liverpool were celebrating winning the Premiership, and the Everton fan who had bought a huge consignment of flares and changed the labels from red to blue. Here's another photograph of Liverpool celebrating their title win with blue flares coming.
That's tremendous, that.
Excellent. Championship football, of course, Ted will be hoping he won't see it next season. I haven't got the video, but I did manage to get a screenshot of this. Burnley versus Queen's Park Rangers last week. Look at all those defenders just all running in. It was like Keystone Cops. Literally 6 of them just all running like that. There was no QPR player at all. And they were just all running. It was just comical. Brilliant clip, that. And how do Premiership players, get home after a match? Well, Cole Palmer runs home. This was unbelievable. This is after the match. He's on his mobile phone coming out of the ground, and he's just running home.
Wow.
So, and it was like literally, it was literally like the Pied Piper. People going, Cole. Like a whole host of kids running after him through London. Absolutely brilliant. This is one of the longest trips away next season. I had to feature this. You think travelling away from home is bad. Truro were promoted. They have to play at Carlisle next season, and the journey, there you go, 6 hours and 56 minutes that's going to take. That's just to get there. Wow, unbelievable. Wow. Football does bring up some nice things from time to time, and getting back to the Liverpool love-in last weekend, when Mo Salah scored, I love the fact that he had he got a fan's phone and took a selfie. That's brilliant, by the way. That is
Class
brilliant.
that.
It was really good. Not as good as the TV guy who obviously isn't a Liverpool fan, who decided to put Nottingham Forest versus Manchester City on the BBC at the same time as Liverpool Spurs. Clearly not a Liverpool fan.
No.
Sometimes you get lookalikes sent in as well. I think this is brilliant. Definitely the same energy there. And football tops. People get things on the back of the football tops. It's quite weird sometimes. These Bournemouth fans, Ed Sheeran, really? And there's nothing being. We're talking a little bit about me not being very happy with the flyer that we had done. Where it's clearly not me. Some people are comfortable in their own skin. Here, spotted at Wolves yesterday, Big Unit and Mrs. Big Unit. And when you're a footballer, it is great to have your get a street named after you. It doesn't matter which country it's in. Here we have Alan Shearer Street. And Arsenal fans were giving Liverpool some stick at the start of the season. Well, Liverpool fans are drinking it in now. Anyone for a bottle of Arsenal tears? Fantastic. But believe you me, they aren't the top ones this week. We've had some absolute belters. This was great. Liverpool stole we go from the Spurs wall, says Cap Virgil. And this Palace fan broke his arm and couldn't clap, so he was slapping his head instead.
Dear God.
Another Crystal Palace one. My daughter's boyfriend is a Villa fan, and tomorrow he's coming to stay for a couple of nights. It's only right I pop some fresh bedding on his bed for him.
Hang on.
Well, that was nice.
She could be sharing
That was nice. That was nice of Emma. And this one. London Marathon, run if you hate Spurs. Brilliant, that banner.
Very good.
We'll go for this one as well. Top two, Chelsea Old School. Good evening. After Liverpool's result today, I understand the club will be obliged to give the Liverpool players a guard of honour. Bearing in mind the last two cup finals I've attended, the Liverpool fans showed their class by booing the national anthem on both occasions. I'm wondering if it would be possible for the club to arrange that God Save the King is played at the time this happens. I'm sure this would be gratefully received by the majority of our crowd and help us cement good feeling between the club and their supporters. Kind regards, Paul Rowe. Brilliant shithousery.
Love that. Absolutely love that.
Winner this week. There was a big fight last week. Conor Benn against Chris Eubank Jr. Conor Benn has stated, I'm devastated about losing this fight. I just need to go to an empty room to gather my thoughts for a while. Daniel Levy has just given him the keys to Spurs trophy room and said, crack on. There's your trolls of the week for this week. Keep them coming in, send them to me, Ted, or I will feature them next week. Great stuff.
We're almost at the end. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm on ignoring your messages. It's just not good enough for me at all. Give us a quick preview of tomorrow's game, mate, and your prediction for it as well.
I will do, mate. Yes, Newcastle United, of course, travelling to Brighton. This is our bogey team, although Eddie Howe says there is no such thing as a bogey team as far as he is concerned. But it is a 2:00 kickoff. It's live on Sky Sports. Newcastle bidding to overturn the poor form against Brighton this season. Of course, they have beaten us 1-0 in the Premier League and 2-1 in the FA Cup at St James's Park. No Joe Linton. He's in Brazil trying to sort his dodgy knee out. Lewis Hall and Jamal Lascelles are both out, but Lascelles is back in training. Matt Targett's picked up a hamstring injury. That's going to put him out for the last few games. Jason Tindall will also serve a 1-game touchline suspension at the Amex after his third booking last week. Good news for Newcastle. No João Pedro. He is suspended after a straight red card against Brentford. The home team are also missing Kadigaloo, Rutter, Webster and Milner. Jason Steele, though, Jan Paul van Heck and Iga Julio could return. They beat West Ham 3-2 last week. That ended a winless run of 5 Premier League games. And keep an eye out for former Newcastle player Yankuba Minte. He's contributed 6 goals in all competitions for Brighton this season, including 5 in the Premier League. His most recent strike came in the FA Cup on Tyneside back in March. This game is the banana skin, I think, in the remaining 4 games. But I think Newcastle will have to rely on Alexander Isak. The right Isak's got to turn up. I'm hoping he does. But I feel that this will be a game where Newcastle will settle for a point. I'm going to go for 2-2.
Interesting you say that, but I don't think they'll get the win, but I do see them coming away with a result here, Steve. I was going to go for a 1-1 draw. I still think Newcastle will finish 4th. So I guess I'll just urge their fans to always look on the Brighton side of life.
Oh, God. Bloody
sorry. I'm sorry, that was awful. Quick one for me, just before we finish and wrap up for the show. Obviously, we've got our game today against QPR at home. I do see a performance. We need to see a performance. It's not just hope now. This is like we need it. I'm going to go for a 3-1 win for Sunderland today and finish off the regular season with a strong ending.
Fantastic. Sorry it's a slightly shorter show. I do have a bus to catch, but big thank you to you, Ted, as well. Great to see you. Rye will be back hopefully next week. And yes, let's hope there's good news as well for Dunstan today. I must give them a shout out. Dunstan have got a huge game today. It's a playoff final against Stocksbridge. If you are in the Gateshead area, you want to get over there. They had 900 fans there on Tuesday night in the semi-final win over Emley. It is admission at the turnstiles by cash or card, so get yourself along if you can. And if you're in the Jarrow area, Jarrow play Thornaby, the Northern League Second Division playoff final. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff there. And on Monday, if you're looking for a bit of football on Monday, Gateshead versus Southend at 3 o'clock. It's the final day of the National League season. That sees Gateshead needing 3 points to swap places with the Shrimpers and snag the final promotion playoff place. So a big weekend of local football as well if you can get along to support
Tremendous.
the local teams. Great stuff. See you next week, mate.
See you later, buddy.
Three's a Crowd podcast will return. That's not a threat, it's a promise.